Presented by The Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. This is InGoal Radio, the podcast. I'm Darren Millard, and today we are thrilled to be joined by a former Vancouver Canuck, a former Canadian Olympian, a great goaltender, and a man that has done an incredible job raising awareness of mental health. Corey Hirsch will stop by the program for an extended conversation with Kevin Woodley. We are also going to chat a little bit about that thing that goes in your head. Masks, not just the plastic that protects your noggin, but all the parts that work together, as we spend some time out at the Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com, as we bring in the co-founders of InGoal magazine, David Hutchison and Kevin Woodley. I'm not sure exactly what kind of moods you guys are in right now, because as goaltenders and people that take the position so seriously, you might be a little bit off your games because of the goals that are being scored in the National Hockey League right now, Hutch. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Everybody's noticing all of them. And I used to be that guy who says a 1-0 game with a lot of great scoring opportunities is what I love because I'm a goaltender. But I like seeing these goals too, I got to say. Seeing all the offense. It's really, for me, it's about the chances because we're seeing some incredible saves as well. I just have to point out, though, this is our first ever international recording. We've got our U.S. office and our Canadian offices online tonight. Right. Isn't that exciting?
This is incredible.
How are things south of the border?
They're good. The hockey team's playing well. A little up and down, but exciting hockey, and I'm enjoying my time on the strip and getting my way around and getting settled. So you guys, Woody, will you come down and visit?
Oh yeah, that's a tough ask. That's not going to be a problem at all. But
just one invite.
I'll
stay at home.
You guys somebody's dad's got to take care of the shop. Who's getting invited? Who's getting invited to Vegas? Me or Dad?
Yeah. And Dad, you know what? You can come at Christmas.
Oh, thanks, son.
Hey, well, I was just going to say, Darren, speaking of getting settled and all the goal scoring, weren't we having this conversation last year? And people were, we didn't have a podcast last year, but weren't people having this conversation last year? And a lot of the talk was about the smaller chest and arms. Offense was up. How much of it was the gear? I remember stories. I remember talking to other people. I remember getting, direct messages from other reporters about this. And part of this is every year. New teams, new coaches, new systems, new bodies, more chances, more mistakes, looser defense. Trust me when I say this, it will tighten up. It will start by the end of the month. It will really crank down at Christmas. The whistles will go away and we'll revert right back to where we were.
I talked to a player about 3 days ago on a visiting team. We were chatting on the phone, and he said it's not even real hockey right now. It's still just a spillover of summer hockey. So that goes to what you were talking about, Woody. But I also worked a game. I worked a game in which the Arizona Coyotes had 5.5 breakaways. I mean, one was just a little one. 5.5 breakaways in one game, and they have 10 in 3 games. That's incredible.
It's like the All-Star game argument, or as I like to say, the 27-18 New York Islanders argument, right? If you're going to give up chances, there's going to be goals. Everybody that bitches and whines about the goalies being too good, and they've never been better. The reality is, and it's funny, Craig Anderson said this a few weeks ago on our podcast, you give today's shooters time and space in the slot, and if they hit their spot, they're probably scoring. And that's just the reality. If you can create that type of wide open offense, and there are trends here. I shouldn't be so blanket statement, but let's be honest. The Pittsburgh Penguins, with their back-to-back cups, the way they created offense with lateral plays across the slot line, the way they focused on preventing those defensively. The Washington Capitals, they turned their offense over to their goalie coach, Scott Murray, and focus on lateral plays and crossing the slot line with passes in the puck. Don't shoot on a 2-on-1 from the slot. Make sure you try and get that pass across, because even if it only gets across 3 out of 4, the chances of those 3 going in compared to shooting the lead guy all 4, the numbers just say it's better. I wonder if those trends are starting to creep in. We are seeing more plays from behind the net and lateral type of attacks, and so maybe this will keep up, and maybe that's all part of it. Teams figuring out that pass off pads and traffic to the net is a little cliched and outdated in terms of the real way you create offense. But for the most part, I think it's just like your player said, Darren. It's shinny hockey. It's wide open. Nobody's cranked it down defensively yet.
I saw something that bothered me a little bit. We have another clipboard sighting of the backup goaltender on the bench.
Who's that?
It used to be always Detroit, like Mike Babcock does it.
Mike Babcock,
with his goaltenders, and now it's happening with Toronto, where the backup goaltender charts faceoffs and shots, and it's spilled over to the Ottawa Senators. DJ Smith, a disciple of Mike Babcock, has it, and Craig Anderson was spotted the other night with a clipboard in hand, charting things on the bench.
And you don't like that?
I bet you he's thrilled.
I think it's ridiculous.
I bet you he is thrilled.
I think it's absolutely in the National Hockey League that your backup goaltender sits there with a clipboard with all the advanced stats that we have, is charting things. I think it's purely a make work project. I have to talk to Mike about this at some point.
You're just pining for the days of Cheech and the hot dogs.
We should probably explain the reasoning behind it. We've done stories at it on InGoal. Actually, I think, to be honest with you, we were the first ones to sort of identify and write about this way back in the day. The concept is, if your backup is charting the faceoffs, it's not so much that your coach is going to use it. They got a million coaches and video and eyes in the sky and earpieces, and like they got all the data they need.
Babcock does. He always takes the little sticky and looks at it and then puts it on the glass, puts it down. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so he uses it, but the idea is you're supposed to keep the guy engaged. That's the philosophy behind it. The complaint from the backup goaltenders, besides having to do something, is they've almost been killed because they've got their head down looking at the chart and a puck goes whirring by. I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been. It was with the Red Wings. Was it Jimmy Howard, or was it even way back before that?
Was it Ozzy?
It might have been Ozga. Just told me how he almost got
murdered.
Ozzy,
I've had the conversation with Ozzy. He hates it more than anything on the planet. Like go down the list. That's how much he dislikes charting, and he would intentionally screw it up. So they wouldn't ask him to do it anymore. He had some tenure, so he could do things like that. But he disliked it so much, and he got me on board with this.
Nice. See, so Ozzy's coming through town with the Red Wings in a week or so. So that's for sure. I'm trying to get him as a guest for us. In addition to both Howard and Bernier, we start banking some of these guys, and for sure, that is now the first question. So, Ozzy, what do you think of this great trend?
Millard says that you love charting the face-offs and the shots, and just watch his head explode. It'll be fun.
I'm on it.
The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Surrey. They must be hopping right now, Woody.
Yeah, it's there aren't very many lulls in the season there, but most of the kids have got their gear and they're back on the ice and well into playing, and so it's kind of that time of year where most of the major purchases have been made, and I thought it was a good time to talk about some of the smaller things surrounding your head, and so we hit up Cam to talk about parts for cages, replacement hardware, but more importantly, Cam had some good advice on when it's time to change those things. It's ironic. It's much like the mental training, right, guys? We talked about this when we had John Stevenson. It's so important, and yet it's almost always an afterthought. New pads, new gloves, new chest protector, and yet we'll go out there on the ice in a cage that's dented, or some of us without a dangler. So Cam did a really good job of walking us through, and we'll listen to him as he walks us through all the different parts they have, the different accessories, the different pieces you can get to kind of keep your head safe, and in some cases keep it drier. And I guess that's a great example, a great segue in terms of why I love the Hockey Shop and why I love going there. It's not just because they have all the latest and greatest from CCM, Bauer, Bryans, Vaughn, Warrior, all the names, but they've got the parts, they've got the accessories, they've got those unique little items that might get overlooked in a bigger store, and they understand when to use them, why they're needed. They make sure they have all that in stock, and if you go in there with a question like, hey, this mask is starting to rattle, this mask is worn out here, can I replace the foams? Can I do this? Do I just need to have a new cage? Not only do they have the parts for it, but they got guys down there in the basement that play the position, that love the position, that live and breathe the position like our audience, like us, and that's why they're the best choice. So make sure you check them up at the Hockey Shop, source for sports in Surrey, or at thehockeyshop.com for all your needs, whether it's big equipment purchases or just a new set of nuts and bolts to keep that cage attached to your mask and your head safe.
Talking about the small things in and around their head. Insert the joke there. Inside the head, the small thing.
Woody's brain?
Yeah. Here's Cam and Woody at the Hockey Shop.
Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, source for sports in Surrey, British Columbia, the outskirts of Vancouver. You can find them, of course, online at thehockeyshop.com. We're back in the basement, or as I call it weekly, a little slice of goalie heaven. And Cam, we've actually caught a momentary lull. So we're going to take advantage of it and actually do this episode out in all the glory of the main sort of Hockey Shop goal department floor space. So I'm going to need you to carry this because I'm going to be distracted looking around at all the brand new, gorgeous, multicolored equipment from all the top manufacturers. Well, you explain to me, kind of trying to pull me back and pull my focus back in on the topic this week, which is masks. Not so much new masks and caring for them, not so much just new masks and buying them, although I'm looking to my right and I see an entire wall, CCM, Bauer. Looks like you've got some of the smaller brands up there as well. Just tons of mask selection. But this is more about taking care of them, when it's time to replace them. What are your options for sort of refurbishing them along the way? So I turn it to you. What do you look for? When's it time to replace? When can you maintain? What kind of things can you fix and what kind of things can't you?
Let's start with the easiest thing off the bat, and that happens to be the cage, because it's the most common repair that we do here in the shop. And when I say repair, it's a replacement, because you can't repair a dented cage.
It's kind of like a bike helmet. If you get hit hard enough for the cage to dent, it's like if you fall off a bike and your bike helmet cracks, it's done its job. Now you need to replace it. Fair?
Exactly. So, the cage is designed to bend in with the shot, but once it has, your steel is compromised, basically.
And your welds are compromised.
Exactly. So it is time to replace. We've definitely seen it all here, and a lot of horror stories and whatnot aside. That said, we've got a lot of replacement cages in stock. Probably have it for your helmet. Got a couple different colors too as well.
I noticed that, not just silver, but you got some that are painted white, some painted black, some painted red even. So for guys that want to sort of match a cage and not have to do their own sort of powder coating to match it, there are some options here. Are there different brands? Are they mostly stock, or do you have some third-party stuff here as well?
Not too much for the third-party stuff. Most of it is like a direct replacement cage for whatever said mask you're looking at. So your CCM, your Bauer, and even Coveted we have, and Sports Mask, all in stock. So they are kind of specific for the mask that they are going on, but you got them. And again, please replace your cage if it's dented. There's just been so many bad ones that we've seen recently. So check your mask, check your cage. If you think it's dented or it looks kind of off, it's time to replace it.
So our listeners can't really see me right now, but I have a very sheepish look on my face because I've been playing with a dented cage for a little while. So
it's bad.
I know. Unfortunately, I also play with a cage that might be illegal here in Canada, and you can't sell me a replacement because it's a cat eye. So, but what kind of options do you see in sort of the certified, the CSA approved version of a cat eye? What are the differences that you see in terms of straight vertical bars versus some of those options that are cat eye but actually certified, so extra bars, not the big space that we see in the NHL?
Yeah, we carry two certified cat eye cages, and one's for Bauer, one's for a CCM. They're basically the same design as both. So what's happening here is that it's actually the premise of a cat eye cage, but they've added more bars in, so the opening's not as big, so you can't fit a stick blade through it, which is the big kind of deal. So really, really good for straight ahead vision. I do find they get a little cloudy, especially with the extra bars in the side, but especially with head trajectory now and days like that, you should be turning your whole head anyway and not seeing out of your peripherals. So
yeah, it's kind of important to actually, you see with your head, not your eyes, as the saying goes. So peripheral plays a role, but not as important as it used to. So the other one too that I liked is, and I've used this one before on a certified, is the sort of straight the square certified cage, sort of square bars. We talked about Tim Thomas on the podcast. We've talked about him in the past, how he liked straight vertical lines. He felt he saw through them better, just what he was used to compared to a cat eye. But I like in some of them where the bar is really nicely thinned out, as opposed to a thicker rounder bar. They've gone with an almost
rectangular shape. Yes.
Rectangular. There's the word I'm looking
for strength and also for visibility as well. But as we both know, when it comes to masks, there's not just cages that need to be replaced. And we have a whole schwack of other things that you can add as well. So one of the things that we usually see over time is that the hardware gets a little bit rusty, especially if people haven't been taking their masks out and drying them properly.
Now, this is a big point you wanted to make on this podcast. If you have a mask that they all come with bags, or most of them come with a mask bag.
Yeah.
I'm a guy who used to throw my mask just straight into my goal bag and then pull it out. But right now with a new mask, I'm putting it in the mask bag and into my goal bag. And then when I get home, I am wisely taking it out of that goal mask bag. Some people don't, and that contributes to quicker wear and tear, quicker deterioration. Walk us through why it's important to not leave your sweaty mask in that mask bag after you get home.
Yeah, and it's all to do with the moisture, the rust, especially on any of your hardware. It makes it very, very hard to replace your cage, especially when it is rusty. One of the other things too is that your foam will also degrade quicker without without it drying properly.
We've seen too some of the newer masks have foams that tend to absorb a little water rather than repelling them. So again, just important to maybe get it out of the bag, squeeze out some of that excess water if you can, and give it an opportunity to dry overnight. It's not going to get to do that. Even if your bag has mesh holes in it, it's just not the same level of breathability.
Exactly. So the whole entire purpose of taking it out of the bag. But
now, some people use dryers. For their gear, would you recommend not using it on a mask? Because again, adding heat to some of these parts, is that something you got to be careful of? You got to find a fine line there.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I tend to just have it air dry, just have it out and let it somewhere where air can circulate kind of all the way through. Now, those dryers, they do help, but as long as it's not, I put it like on the top shelf of the dryer, for example, so it doesn't have direct heat or anything like that. But if you have one of those dryers, it's just mainly airflow, like it should be fine.
Okay, so we've talked about make sure you keep it out of your bag. We've talked about cage replacement. We talked about making sure you don't have rusty bolts or bent cages. You also sell chin cups. That was one thing I hadn't thought of. I've using the CCM Lefebvre mask currently right now, and that chin cup, again, because there's so much sweat, it can get a little worn out and a little beat up over time. You should sell replacement parts for several different brands on the chin cups.
Yes, it is something that gets worn out quite easily, and it's a quick replacement. Same thing. That's why we carry a whole schwack load of sweatbands as well. Something that's a little bit of a nice product that we like to push every now and then would be the ShamWow sweatbands, especially if you sweat a lot. These things work fantastic.
I'm big on the ShamWow, not just because the advertorials and that guy who used to promote them was hilarious, but like the ShamWow sweatband for goalies is legit. I'm a heavy sweater. I'm old. I can lose like 5 to 8 pounds a game in fluids. I come off the ice. We have a dry scrape at one of my skates, and even then I come off and I just like wring out the ShamWow sweatband, and guys can't believe how much water comes out of that thing. So if you are a heavy sweater, it's a great alternative to sort of absorb it, and for at least for a while before it starts running down your face and making you blind.
You heard it here, folks. The Kevin Wilde stamp of approval.
Yeah, the heavy sweater stamp of approval. But some other options too. You've got goal masks, some terry cloth ones from Nash. You've got ones from Sport Mask. Mask harnesses. There's another one. We've seen it. Have a post about how the Canucks Utica equipment manager sews it so that he sews the harness so that you can see the whole back plate and some of the artwork on some of his goalie's back plate. You've got some options here stock that'll allow you to sort of expose have the harness sort of clip around the loops as opposed to running over the back plate and hiding the artwork.
Yeah, that's correct. So it gives, again, we actually have a product that does this made by Nash. They're hidden backplate straps. So again, if you have a little bit of artwork on the back of your helmet and you want to show it off to the world, you have that option. Or if you're just looking for the standard replacement straps, we've got those too. Your run-of-the-mill 5-point harness, easy to replace, and we got lots of them.
Or if you're like me and you ask the artist to put the names of your wife, kids, and dog on your back plate, and he puts your dog on top of and ahead of your wife, it's probably best to just go with the original harness and hide all that.
I would probably hide that.
Yeah,
yes.
that didn't go over well. Okay, anything else on the mask front? We've talked about taking care of them. One of the other items that we see hanging here, I know Darren Millard is going to give me and Hutch crap when he hears this because neither one of us wears it, but the importance of a dangler for those who prefer to use it and some of the options on a dangler.
Yes. Again, we carry a few different options here. Basic dangler, the Nash ones are usually our good go-to. Put it this way, they're all made out of the same plastic. That said, it's definitely some like it would encourage you to wear. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't wear one either. But, I'm staring at a giant bruise on your collarbone. I had one recently as well. We wore danglers, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, nobody said we were the brightest guys. Do as we say, not as we do. All right, Cam, I think that wraps it up. Last question. When is it too much? When is the rusted hardware, the dented cage, you can replace all that? When is it time to just seriously consider getting a new mask? What are some of the telltale signs?
Cracks in the shell. That's the most important one to take a look for. So as long as the shell of a mask is structurally sound, usually in most cases you're still good. But if you're starting to see like cracks down to the fiberglass, certain points of the mask you can actually flex because the foam or material's degraded that much. It's time for a replacement.
Is there a time frame on that? I guess it depends on how many guys play, but I mean, if you're wearing a mask that you've been wearing for 3 or 4 years, are you probably running a risk at that point?
Depending on, again, the structural integrity of your shell. That all comes down to that.
The hard part there, though, is a lot of those cracks will be underneath the foam, and so you never see them. One thing I had a couple of NHL equipment managers over the year tell me is, if you've got a mask where you've taken shots off the head, it never used to ring, and all of a sudden it's just ringing all the time, it's causing ringing, that might be a sign that you got some cracks you can't see and that integrity's gone, and that's what's leading to that ringing. So that might be one way of checking, because like I said, a lot of those cracks can occur underneath the foams. It's not like you're going to take it apart, although Bauer has one where you can actually, just unscrew a few things and manually the foam will come out. I like that option. But for most, the reality is you can't see those cracks.
Yeah. So that was another good point. Like if you are starting to have that ringing and you are starting to have, again, you're starting to feel more than you used to, it's probably a good sign that time for something new.
And if you're like me and you just hear voices in your head, that might have nothing to do with the mask integrity. It may just be a problem yourself. So anyways, Cam, thanks for walking us through the masks. Make sure you check him out. Check out all these options for masks. Like I said, everything from hardware, new cages, danglers, sweatbands, chin cups. They've got it here at the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports in Surrey, and at thehockeyshop.com. If you've got questions about them, make sure you contact them. And where can they get a hold of you, Cam? Because I know you guys are the experts. If they've got a weird, obscure question, chances are you've seen it and you have the answer.
604-589-8299.
Okay, perfect. Cam, thanks for taking the time with us this week.
Thanks, Kevin.
Finally, we get some progress on the dangler front. I'm so excited. So
Progress?
Woody's got some grief here about not wearing the dangler. And are you going to come on board?
No, I'm not on board. Cam's not on board. Woody's not on board. You're the lone wolf here.
Well, Woody took a shot in the collarbone, so he's going to see the light.
I mean, it's not broken, is it? It's just a little bruise. That's like a badge of honor for us goalies, isn't it? No, I'm just kidding. I do struggle with them, Darren, but this was a doozy, and so yeah, maybe we'll have to at least give it a shot and give it a fair chance. Because to be honest with you, I never really have, and it's much like that conversation we just had with Cam, and he's talking about. Here I am giving people grief for, buying new pads, but not taking care of, say, their skate blades or their mask. And he talks about cages, and once it's dented, it's done. And I've got a cat eye that's dented all the way down to my cheek from a guy who played at a high level, and I've been wearing it for months, and it's about the stupidest thing you could do. So maybe when I get my new cage and wisely replace the safety elements of that, I'll add a dangler just to give it a shot. And mostly, Darren, just to be honest with you, just mostly to make you happy.
So you're at the hockey shop more than any person I know. Like, you're almost at the hockey shop more than Cam is. Why do you get that cage replaced?
Because they can't sell them.
This might be might be a bit of an indictment to answer this honestly, but I wear a cage that is not technically legal to play in Canada. I may have had to lean on one of our equipment buddies to to maybe pull one of a titanium cat eye cage off of Carey Price's shelf in the warehouse and send it to me. So if the guy that runs my beer league, the commissioner and the referees are listening, please ignore this comment because technically I'm not supposed to be playing in it. But I think like a lot of us, again, just probably another stupid risk just because I want to see the puck better. Huh. I have a cat eye that I guess technically a stick blade could maybe wake its way through one day, and it's probably not worth it.
I've gone to the straight bar cage, and I never, really? ever thought I would. But I did.
You and Tim Thomas. There you go. Maybe I once again, maybe that's what I do. Put on the straight bar cage, get rid of the dented cat eye, try a dangler, and buy some bubble wrap and just wrap myself in it and go out there like a giant bubble boy.
You're a walking time bomb. Well, Dad, talk to him, please.
I have the same problem. It's do as I say, not as I do. So I would make any goaltender I work with use all of the above, because there's no more important piece of yourself that you need to look after than your head. But I just haven't been able to get there. And quite frankly, most of the guys I play against don't shoot as hard as the average peewee anyway, so it doesn't matter for me.
Yeah, when they stop to flip the puck on edge to raise it over you.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a sign. That's exactly. A sign.
All I have to do is lie down along the goal line and I got the whole net covered.
Great interview coming up. Our feature interview this week is with Corey Hirsch, an incredible junior, a national hockey leaguer, an Olympian. I've had a chance to work with him a little bit in the broadcasting side, and an advocate of mental health. So Woody, set up your conversation with Corey.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend that we were this bright or that we had this great master plan, and that's why we've made you wait an extra day for the InGoal podcast this week, because we wanted to talk to Corey on World Mental Health Day, which is October 10th. But it's kind of fitting that that's the way the schedule worked out for us this week. Corey actually was taking part in a seminar environment today for the afternoon. And I was supposed to meet him downtown to do this interview. I think it ran 1 to 5. By the time he got out of the room, it was 7 o'clock. And Corey being Corey, he was just like as apologetic as you could be because I was downtown waiting on him. But like, as I told him, no need, because I knew exactly what happened, and he confirmed it. Like, all these people wanted to talk to him after, to either ask him questions, ask him about how to get help, or to just open up to him. Something I've done, recently as well. And I think that speaks to the strength of his story. And I think it speaks to the bravery he showed in coming forward with that story at a time as when he said when he did it, he wasn't sure if this would cost him the ability to work in hockey, forget as a coach or as a broadcaster. Like, he wasn't sure how this would be received. And his story in the Players Tribune opened up a lot of doors and opened up a lot of conversations about mental health. We talk about that. We talk about, some of the other people that have followed, Robin Lehner. We've obviously had Clint Malarchuk and his incredible story on the podcast as a guest. We talk about Justin Goldman and the Goalie Guild and the work he's doing with Lift the Mask. Ben Meisner. A lot of goaltenders, it seem to be on the forefront of sharing these stories. And I think they should be applauded for it. Because it encourages other people to be brave enough to share theirs and to get help. And that's the message Corey delivers as we sat down and talked. But we also had some fun. It wasn't just about that. It was about the career that surrounded it. Because as much as that's become a big part of who he is today and helping people, he had a hell of a career. He had a fun career and a lot of big moments within there. And the fact he did a lot of it early on, while trying to battle these things secretly, is all the more incredible to me. So I really enjoyed it, and I think our readers or listeners, not readers, will too.
It's a far wide-ranging conversation discussing mental health, goaltending, the gear, and our gears, if you want to put it towards your head. The feature interview, Corey Hirsch, on InGoal Radio, the podcast, presented by Source for Sports Surrey and the Hockey Shop.
All right, so we're here with Corey Hirsch in Vancouver, where you are now working as an analyst on Sportsnet Radio, but where you also play. So there are so many ways we could go here, and we're going to get into so many things, Corey. We're going to talk about growing up, what you loved about the position. We're going to talk about some of the work you've done. It's World Mental Health Day today, World Mental Health Awareness Day. We're going to talk about that. the article you wrote. We're talking about playing through the 90s. We're going to talk about gear. But because it's the Canucks, we're in Vancouver, and I'm looking at a picture of you behind you over your shoulder with the Alfred Hitchcock mask. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with gear. That mask, equipment, like, was that part of what, we always ask guys, what made you fall in love with the position?
Oh, yeah.
Did equipment play a role?
It's gear, equipment 100%. So I grew up watching 70s goalies, Mike Palmateer, Ken Dryden. And what I loved about the position was the characters that you became when you put the equipment on. Like Ken Dryden off the ice was kind of a bit of a nerd. He's like a nerdy Cornell College guy, right? But you put the equipment on and he becomes this character. And his mask is iconic. And the same thing with Mike Palmateer. So I've gotten to be friends with Mike Palmateer now, which is so cool because I idolized him growing up. But when he put the equipment on, just the masks and the paint jobs and the equipment that they could wear, and that they were all different. And what I loved about it was your equipment reflected your personality. And not to get into today, but I feel that's lost a little bit in today's game. Is the personality doesn't match the equipment anymore. And that's what I miss about goaltending.
Okay. So on that note, you just mentioned Palmateer, and he was a name that came up today because remember when he went out for the Winter Classic game wearing an old school mask and a gear. And then here we are in Vancouver. We've just had the 50th anniversary home opener, and Kirk McLean skates out in his, a replica of his 94 set, his 94 mask, a Hespler wood stick.
Right. Hespler.
And that old, spaghetti skate jersey that you wore, the black and the gold and the orange.
Yeah.
What does that do for you when you saw those guys, whether it's Palmateer or whether it's Kirk last night, out in that old gear? Does it transport you back to their era?
Yeah. And I think, and you and I talked about this. That's what I love is that it's like going back in time and you're that kid again watching Mike Palmateer play. Or, when I first broke into the league, I was 23 years old when I got traded to Vancouver, and all of a sudden I'm playing with Kirk McLean. And, even in the 94 Stanley Cup Finals, like that was the equipment that it just brings you back to that time. There's a nostalgia there that we all love. And again, even back then, like the gear represented the goalie. And so when you saw that type of equipment, well, who do you think of? You think of Kirk McLean. When you saw, who else? When you saw Patrick Waugh with those old Coho pads with the big, who do you think of? You see those pads, you see Patrick Waugh. So it brings you back to that time and that goalie. And I was the guy that sent the video out. Again, we talked about this, about the goalie equipment being able to be reduced. Well, one is because I was a goalie. I knew what could be reduced and what couldn't. People felt like I sold goalies out. I wasn't selling them out. I was doing my job. And, the fact is that, when guys put on the gear, they became a different character. And that's what I love. That's where the Alfred Hitchcock mask comes from, was even that. It's such an iconic moment.
Okay. So the Hitchcock mask, that was part of your personality. We got another mask here that's got some native themes on it from when you were in Vancouver. Were both of those Harrisons? Was that?
So Patty O'Neill sent me to get a Harrison mask because he had he liked his goalies wearing Harrison masks. And I think Kay Whitmore had one. I think Kirk McLean had one. So I could fly to Toronto, and Harrison brings me into this like warehouse, and I've never met the man before, but I know that he's made all these iconic masks. So
I'm like,
this is like meeting the creme de la creme of like, this.
He's like the Yoda of goalie masks.
Right. You might as well introduce me to like Tom Cruise or something, right? Like celebrity wise. So I go and I get there, and he's just kind of an offbeat guy. And I'm like, kind of like, oh, where's this going to go? Like, is this going to, so he takes me back into this warehouse, and it's like Silence of the Lambs. He sits me up in this chair, slaps a ton of Vaseline on my face, and then basically starts paper macheting me. And I'm thinking at the time, like, am I going to make it back to Vancouver? Like,
this is the end of Corey Hirsch.
Like, is this, am I going to get, and it ended up, they did the mask. They put the 2 straws in your mouth. And I had done masks before, and what other guys had done with iTech and all that is they just did the outer side of your face. Harrison did your whole face. And then he shows me all these molds of Ken Dryden's mold, like all these guys. I don't know if he did, or it was a bunch of guys that he had from the 70s. I thought that they had all their molds, and I was like, wow, is that really cool? I don't know if he still has them, but if he does, he should sell them because they could be worth a lot of money.
Reminds me
so
of the
cool.
First time I went to the Lefebvre factory, there was a mold up on the wall, and you talk about iconic.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw the mask, the shape, it was like, that's Patrick's.
No way.
You just knew because of the shape and because of the shape of his mask over the years. So again, we identified goalies with those types of things, and I get why, but you're right. Sometimes it feels, even in an era where like Bauer can put anything on pads, and some of the stuff they're coming up with is just fantastic. The colors and the brightness, we're seeing more color, but we're also seeing a lot of white, and we're seeing a lot of masks that kind of look the same. And yeah, it kind of feels like at a time when maybe there should be more personality than ever, it feels a little whitewashed.
Yeah, it really does, because everyone's gone to white goalie equipment. Everything is mass produced now. So you've got to pump out all these masks. Bauer's got to pump out all these masks and there's no time for character anymore, because you want it, and you want it today as a goalie now. But back when I played, it took you a month to break in a set of pads. It took you a month to break in a glove. So it didn't, it wasn't like you wanted it tomorrow so that you could wear it in Saturday's game. It was, you got it. You wanted it as quick as you could. It felt like Christmas when you got it, but you still knew it was going to take you 2 or 3 weeks to break it in. But as far as, it just, like I said, again, it was about the character, about the personality. And it was almost like, playing dress up. And it was just, that's what I miss in today's game. And I'm sure you've talked to a ton of other goalies.
And there's still some, like Henrik Lundqvist's Statue of Liberty logo.
So cool.
Like those have become iconic for him. And so there's still guys. So let me ask, who was your guy growing up, and did gear play a role? Like, did you have a goalie?
It was Mike Palmateer.
It was Palmateer.
And it was no question. It was Mike Palmateer. It was the Toronto Maple Leafs, that jagged mask. He told me a story about that mask. So that mask, I got to work with him. And so that mask, he said, I don't know if he sent out a thing of someone draw me a mask, and I can't remember if the story was, and then that's how he did it. But it was a kid that drew that mask, and that's how he ended up with that mask.
And then again, it became iconic.
And then I don't know if you've heard, a lot of those guys, those goalie masks got stolen a lot. Like Mike Palmateer's got stolen. He found it online like 20 years later. I think John Garrett's got a story like that too, that you might have. But there's a few guys that those goalie masks, like people would actually like steal them, and now we're finding them online.
Well, and so Connor Hellebuck just got a new mask the other day. We saw it like a month ago, and it was kind of like, what took so long? Eye Candy Air Steve Nash painted it for him. Turns out the mask we saw finally in the NHL the other day was the second one, because the first one went missing in transit very mysteriously. So, like, hey, I mean, I guess, if you're a UPS guy or whatever, not to throw a UPS, whatever, you're a delivery guy, and you see this $2,500 paint job mask, and it's an NHL guy, and you have an opportunity.
I don't know if they want them, or if they just feel like they can sell them, or they just want but yeah, Mike Palmateer was because I was in Calgary, we got Toronto games. That's what we got.
That's how
Toronto,
it was back then.
Yeah. And it was on channel 6, and my dad would make me get up and change the channel. That's how old I am now. Instead, there's no remotes, right? Dad would be like, hey, get your ass over to the TV and change the channel. So you had to change it.
Now, if he was your guy, what got you started? Like, how'd you start playing the position?
My brother played. He was a forward, but I remember going to the rink, and I always just wanted to be the goalie. Like, all of us are the same thing. We'd throw a tennis ball off the wall watching Hockey Night in Canada, and you're 4 years old and you're doing that. But when I went to the rink, they used to give you the equipment.
Right.
So the community used to give you the equipment. I don't know if they still do, but
some do.
Yeah. So you're 6 years old, and you're like, I remember asking my dad, I'm like, Dad, go ask the coach. I want to be and he's like, no. He's like terrified. He doesn't want his kid to be, he's like thinking I'd never have the confidence to do it. 6-year-old kid, but that's how badly I wanted to be a goalie. So I went to the coach, grabbed I remember it was in a plastic bag. Like I remember nothing from when I was like 6 years old, but I remember vividly the goalie equipment in a large clear plastic bag sitting there. And I remember going over and just like almost claiming it. So I couldn't tell you, the events of who was president or whatever back, but I can vividly see the equipment sitting there, grabbing it. And then that's how I became a goalie. But back then, here's the difference than today. I was the only goalie on my team until Bantam. There wasn't two goalies.
So you just got to keep playing.
You just kept playing. And I was always just good. Like, hopefully I don't want to sound it, but I was just always good. So nobody's like, oh, Corey's the goalie. That's just what it was. And so I just played.
Staked your claim and played right through.
Never played forward, always played goalie.
Okay, so from right up until the Calgary Canucks, AJHL, and then quickly into the Kamloops Blazers in the Western League. Is there a point there? It's so funny when I talk to guys who played in different eras. Nowadays, you would have had a goalie coach from the time if you started at 6, you might have had one at 6.
Yeah, no.
Back then, I'm guessing you didn't know goalie coach. We're talking 88, 89, first year in Kamloops. Probably no goalie coach.
No.
Self-taught. At what point in that process did you see this as something that I can make a living? The NHL became something you thought about.
You know what? From the time I was 10 years old,
okay.
I don't know if you've had other guys say that, but
a lot of guys dream about it, but from 10, did you think it was a realistic thing? Being
an idiot from Calgary, I believed it. And I just believed it all the way through. And like, I was going to play in the NHL. That's just what it was. So when it really started to change for me though, was I played for the Calgary Canucks and I got invited to Team Canada's development camp in the summer.
Okay.
Dave King invites me there. I'm 15 years old and I go to this camp and it's all newly drafted guys. So they're good because they used to have a national team back then.
Right.
So they would build a team and it's all really good hockey players. And I go to this camp and I'm 15 years old. I'm tearing it up. Like I'm doing really well. And then I remember, going into the locker room and guys are like looking at me like I'm 15, like I'm 120 pounds. I'm just a kid. And I remember some of them actually making fun of me. And the one guy's like, asked me if I'd ever had sex with a girl before, like one of the actual players. And I was 15. I was like, yeah, once. Lying, right? Like I totally lied. And then he just starts laughing, right? But that's how, so it was at that camp that I realized like this is something that, and then Dave King actually offered me the opportunity to either stay in Calgary and play with the Canucks and practice with the Team Canada national team.
Wow.
When they were back, or go to Kamloops. Okay. So Bob Brown gets wind of this, who's the GM of Kamloops. Him and Ken Hitchcock come to my house. So they come to my house. Okay. And so Ken Hitch is like 500 pounds at the time. Like he's a big man.
Yep.
And he comes in and sits at my kitchen table with Bob Brown. And, we had these chairs that were like in an S shape. And they didn't have any back legs. They were steel. And Hitch sits in this chair and he's a large man at the time, like very heavy. My mom was mortified that the chair was going to break and it never did, right? With Hitch. So then we get to the school part with Hitch and they're recruiting me. And Hitch goes to Bob. He says, yeah, we're going to fly out to the Western Conference or to the Eastern Conference this year, right? Because Kamloops was in the West. And my parents are worried about missing too much school. And Bob goes, yeah, we're gonna fly out to the Eastern Conference this year. So I'm like, I sold, I'm signed, I deliver. I go to Kamloops. February comes, Eastern swings come, and I'm like, Hitch, where's my plane ticket? Get on the effing bus, Hershey. There's no plane ticket. But in all honesty, I couldn't have asked for a better place to play. And Hitchcock was a great coach, and he's done an amazing thing with his weight. He's done such a great, I saw him the other day in Edmonton. It looks fantastic. Bob Brown gave us a safe environment. Like it was just such an amazing place to play. I was so blessed to play there.
So 4 years in Kamloops, Memorial Cups in which of the, I don't have it in front of me.
Lost in 90.
Okay.
Eric Lindros was on Oshawa. They won.
Yeah, he's pretty good. I heard
he's a pretty good player. Everyone's like, hey, why don't you guys just fight him? Why don't you just beat him up? Yeah. Okay. He was 6'5", like 235. Nobody was beating up Eric Lindros. And then in 92, we ended up winning with Daryl Sidor, Scott Niedermeyer were my defensemen.
Yeah, so, that's not a bad deal.
Yeah,
for
Needs
and Sidor.
Yeah, a Hall of Famer, and still probably the best player. Well, he was the best player I ever played with. Yeah.
91 drafted by the Rangers.
Yep.
92, 93, you start in Bingo, Binghamton Rangers,
Yep.
AHL. Get 4 games up with New York. What was the transition like to pro for you?
It was hard being away from home when I was 20. I really, my first year, because I had billets all the way up. And then I remember my 20-year-old year, I had an amazing year. I was rookie of the year in the AHL, had a great, it was 35-4. Like, that was my record. Got called up to,
holy crap. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm looking at it in front of me.
Like I am tearing up the league on the ice. Off the ice, I'm an absolute disaster. I'm not sleeping. I'm having anxiety issues. I'm like having panic attacks. I'm really not doing very well. But on the ice is my safe place, right? Like, it's like I get on the ice, I get focused. I'm just doing amazing. And it was a tough year. It really was. I played my first 2 NHL games, played them very well. Ended up playing a couple games at the end of the year where the season was pretty much done. Mario lit me up for like 3 on me, 2 on Richter, and it was the Mario Lemieux show. So I ran into that.
You did.
But yeah.
I think, sounds like, I think there's quite a few guys that
I
ran
wasn't
into
the
that
only
back
one.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah. You weren't
Kevin
alone in
Lowe
that
sat beside me, said, Hershey, you won't be the first one. You won't be the last. Don't worry about it.
What was Mike Richter like? I mean, there's a guy
Ricky
that I
was
think
awesome.
sometimes gets overlooked in the conversation of all time great. Like, he, one of those guys.
Yeah. Probably one of his legs was 2 of mine. Like, it was like, he was a fitness machine and he had tree stumps for legs. He won the fitness award like every year. He was in, and as a guy, like just a great character person. I have nothing but good things to say about Mike Richter. And the other guy was John Van Beesbroek. Beezer was good to me too. And Beezer's historically, he was known to be a little bit, some guys he was good to, some guys he as far as goalie partners. But he took me for dinner after my first ever NHL exhibition game. Like, he was really good to me. Yeah.
Now this is where, we tie into the article that you wrote in Players Tribune.
Oh yeah.
This is that you mentioned the anxiety and everything you were going through. Is this where it came to a head, or was this something that you had to continue to deal with throughout your pro career?
Yeah, no. So I have obsessive compulsive disorder, which, is almost, I can tell you the day, the time, everything of kind of when my brain just kind of, I guess, broke would be the word. Depression's a little different. All their anxiety issues are different. They can kind of creep up on you over time. It's a slow kind of what happened in your childhood, blah, blah, blah. I had a great childhood, great parents, great everything. OCD is just kind of a disconnecting of wires, I guess, in your brain. Is how the best way I can describe it. So yeah, so my second year, I go with the Canadian national team, win a silver medal at the Olympics, with the New York Rangers on a run to the Stanley Cup. And when this something just kind of breaks, and without getting, this could be an hour long story, so we won't get into it. But from there on, I'm having severe mental health issues. And, with obsessive compulsive disorder, I could do everything. People think of hand washers. Well, I would do everything in my head. So anything repetitive or obsessive was going on in my own brain, thinking wise. So you didn't see any outward actions by me, which is what makes OCD sometimes hard to diagnose.
Because it's all internalized.
Yeah. So it's all in my own head. So you can't see it. Like most mental illnesses, you can't see it. So anyways, it gets to the point where I'm having debilitating panic attacks. New York Rangers win the Stanley Cup.
Are you on the bench at that point?
No, I'm the third goalie.
You're
I'm just
the black
roster.
case.
Yeah, I'm the black case. Yeah, I'm the black case. But what an incredible moment to be part of. But here I am getting my picture taken with the Stanley Cup, what I've always dreamed of. And I'm just like, I'm done. Like, I want to end my life. Like, I'm done. Because I don't know what's going on and I don't want to live like this. So I get through that summer. I make an attempt on my life, which is the story. If you go back to read the Players Tribune article, and of course, thankfully, I'm still here. But I decide that I'm going to just hide it and live my life, right? I don't want anyone to know. There's stigma attached to the NHL. You don't want your teammates to know. You don't want
It's a different time.
Yeah, completely different time. Nobody really understood it. So 3 years later, eventually with mental illness, it's like a broken leg. You have to deal with it. You're not going to walk around 3 years with a broken leg and not deal with it and try and play in the National Hockey League. It's just not going to happen. So I reach out to a trainer. I get some help.
This year in Vancouver.
I'm in Vancouver, and this is the Coles notes. Like this is the Coles notes of the story. But here's my take on all of this. And this is what I would like to tell anybody that's listening, that's struggling, is I spent 3 years in hiding, right? Made one attempt on my life, was about to make another, and decided to reach out to a trainer. So Mike Bernstein, the trainer of Vancouver Canucks, he hooks me up with a therapist. Therapist comes to my apartment in Vancouver because I don't want to go out somewhere, and I don't want any people in Vancouver know me. I don't want to be seen. I'm in mental health. Like, I don't want to be seen as crazy.
Right.
He diagnoses me within 20 minutes. So I suffer with panic attacks, almost ending my life, hating life, miserable.
In the National Hockey League.
In the National Hockey League. And I'm diagnosed within 20 minutes. Right. And from there on, no, it wasn't an easy road, but, I was able to get help. It took me a while to get the proper help after that. But and then it just was like, really, 20 minutes, you came and diagnosed me, and I went through all of that. And that's why I encourage people, just don't be afraid of what's going on. Go get the help. But to backtrack again, because this is a little more hockey orientated than mental health. It's I played in the Olympics. Played with New York, Stanley Cup, broadcaster, goalie coach in the National Hockey League. And my point is that there's a lot of people out there that think that, okay, I have a mental illness, that I can't be successful. Well, I mean, you look at what Robin Lehner's done, incredible stuff. So don't tell me you can't be successful if you have a mental illness, but you have to go and get the help. So that's kind of, a little off topic on the goaltending, but it's a message to get out there.
As long as you're comfortable with it, it's not. Not off topic, because you mentioned Lehner. We've seen it with Ben Meisner. There are other.
There's more out there.
There are other goalies that we both know in the National Hockey League that are struggling with this, and some just choose to get help behind closed doors rather than go.
Which is their prerogative, which is awesome.
Absolutely, 100%.
As long as you're getting help, absolutely.
But what I love about what you did and what Robin's done, and being active now with the Same Here movement, and there's other guys too, is it opens up a discussion that a lot of people weren't having. Justin Goldman at the Goalie Guild has started his Lift the Mask initiative.
I've spoken with Justin. Yeah, so, awesome.
Opening and providing that outreach, and like you said, it's about being comfortable going and getting help. I wanted to ask you, do you think there's just more of us goalies that have been open about it? Or is there something about, like, this is a position that can be very solitary.
Oh, absolutely.
You internalize a lot. The pressure is unbelievable. Like, is it a coincidence that almost all the names we've talked about here are goaltenders?
I think we're more apt to be open. I think because we deal with so much stress and pressure as it is, that we're just kind of like, screw it. Whatever. I don't care. But as far as hockey goes, hockey is not the reason that I had a mental illness. Hockey saved me, really. I'm not sure I'd be here today without hockey. But so anybody that tries to tell you that hockey created their mental illness, I don't believe that. I don't buy that. It's years of different things. Robin Lehner, him and his story, that is just absolutely incredible. Obsessive compulsive disorder is one thing. What Robin Lehner went through is another. And I'm just so proud of him and what he's done for mental illness. And what he's shown that you can, this is a guy that was up for a Vezina last year, best goalie in the National Hockey League. So, if you're a coach out there, don't give me any of this crap that if my goalie has mental health issues, that he's not going to be good enough to play for me. Michael Phelps has 23 gold medals. He has depression issues. Well, I'd take Michael Phelps on my swimming team any day. I don't know if I'd put him in net.
We're not putting you on a swimming team. I've seen him in trunks. We're not putting you on a swimming team.
So that's the thing that we're all worried about as players, is if that somebody else knows or a coach knows, is that, well, they're going to get rid of me.
Right.
When in actual fact, Robin Lehner is probably way stronger than anybody I know, and I'd put him in my net any day. But there's the unknown. We're still in the unknown of the stigma.
Okay. Some of those different initiatives, are there any ones that, today you spoke at a panel?
Yeah.
You've gotten involved in it. The way you've embraced this role, being an advocate, being somebody that other people can talk to, does that help? Do you?
It's therapy for me in a sense.
Well,
a little bit, yeah.
I wondered if it could, it's also got to be hard. It's a lot of pressure. You're talking about a lot of things, all the time. How do you?
It's hard listening to other people. Some other people's stories are heartbreaking. I mean, there's suicide involved. There's lots of other things. But as far as, when we're talking about goalies and athletes, so here's the thing about goalies and athletes is that when I was sick, I couldn't train properly. I couldn't eat properly. I didn't sleep properly. So when I did go to get help, all of a sudden now I've become a better player because now I can train properly. I've gotten help. I'm sleeping again. I'm eating properly. When you're in the midst of mental illness, and all those things go out the window. So, if for someone out there that's listening, like, and they're one of the things we're worried about is as goalies, and this might be off tangent a little bit though, is that if I get help with my mental illness, maybe I won't be as good of a goalie, right? You go through that in your own mind. And I went through that too, is that,
in what sense? You thought it was giving you an edge in some way?
Well, you think that your mental illness is who you are and that it's actually helping you be a better goalie. And if I get rid of that, well, I'm already in the NHL or I'm already in the minors. I'm on my way to pro. I don't want to get rid of that because then what am I? Is it going to, if I go get help, is it going to make me worse? Right. So this is mental illness. This is the lie that it teaches you. When in actual fact, I was a way better goalie after I went to get help than I was before, because again, now I can train properly. I can eat properly. I can sleep properly. I'm dealing with staying in the moment. I'm not as anxious and worried. So that's the myth that mental illness creates is that, your brain lies to you and it tells you all these lies. So again, if someone out there is listening, you'll be a better player by going and getting help, and you'll be better for your teammates. You'll be better for those around you. Like I withdrew from my teammates. I wouldn't hang out with them anymore. I was losing weight. Like, how could I have been a good goalie at that point anymore? I couldn't. But then once I got the help, I became way better. But unfortunately, back then, nobody knew what to do with me, and it was too late.
Do you think the stigma? Did the stigma affect your career in a negative way? You think?
I think it wasn't so much the stigma.
Even though you got help,
it was the unknown. Nobody knew, right? Like, so I don't blame the Canucks at all. They didn't know what to do with me because they'd never dealt with anything like that before. They just hadn't seen it. So it wasn't so much the stigma. It was the fear of the unknown that they just didn't know what to do. My own mother didn't know what to do, right? Like she'd never dealt with anything like that. So now that we're educating ourselves, and this is where I want the NHL to get better at. And Dr. Shaw he's an amazing man, does an amazing job. Then the NHL does do a good job, and they try and help as much as they can. But what they need to do is educate their coaches, their general managers, and the players, so they know what to look for and they know how to deal with it if it does happen to a player. Because 20% is the numbers, 1 in 5. So there are 4 players on each team.
Yeah, it's got to be more than just the goalies that are admitting it.
And mental health doesn't discriminate.
Right.
I don't care if you're a lawyer. I don't care if you're a doctor. I don't care if you're, a politician, an athlete, a movie star,
forward or a defenseman,
or if you're swinging a hammer for a living.
Right.
Nobody is immune to mental health issues. It can affect us all.
Well, I think it's so important and brave. And we've had this conversation with Clint Malarchuk, who does a lot of the same speaking.
Clint's
also
amazing,
dealt with some OCD issues. That you guys put yourselves out there like that so that other people will feel supported and that it's safe to come for themselves. So I applaud you for that.
Oh, thanks.
But I still want to go back to the career.
Please
I got
do.
a few more.
Yeah. Oh, we got off a tangent there. Yeah.
It's a good tangent. It's a positive tangent. It's not from the experience, but from your willingness to share it so it can help others. So Canucks, we talked about 94.
Yeah.
We all know about the stamp.
Oh yeah, the stamp.
We know about the Forsberg. So Swedish stamp, the Forsberg move, the gold medal game.
Yeah.
How much do you have to? You won a silver medal at the Olympics. A Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, at least it wasn't some slug, right?
Beat you in a shootout with a Hall of Fame move that is now mimicked everywhere.
It's unbelievable.
But when you're now a color commentator for the Canucks and Elias Peterson makes that move on Mackenzie Blackwood last year, and it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And you're like, I saw that first.
Yeah.
Everybody,
Yeah.
How do you deal with all the people like me who ask this stupid question?
People think about it. It doesn't bother me at all. Like I could care less.
Silver medal.
Yeah, it was silver medal. And it was a great move by Peter Forsberg. And it's so cool that that's what it's called. It's actually so when you look at things, when I look at my life and I look at everything, that happening made me relevant in history. Okay. So when you look at everything that I've gone through with mental health, and sorry not to bring it back to mental health, but if you look at what I've gone through with mental health, and everything, and my story coming out, that moment is what made me relevant. That moment is what allowed me to tell my story in the Players Tribune and get all the, the audience views and everything, because people remember me as the goalie from the Olympics that Peter Forsberg scored. So it gave me a bigger platform and an audience. So it's an amazing kind of circle of how that all happens. If that doesn't happen, does anybody really know who Corey Hirsch is?
Well, you played 108 games in the NHL despite going through all this.
Yeah, that's true.
You won Memorial Cups.
Yeah.
You have an Olympic silver medal without whether it's Forsberg or somebody else shooting with a wrist shot.
Yeah.
Like I still think a lot of people would have known who Corey Hirsch was. Besides, he still got the Hitchcock Psycho mask, which that's in the Hall of Fame, isn't it?
It is.
So Corey Hirsch is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, and that mask is from basically what we talk about is that I always felt an obligation to be somewhat cool as a goalie, like to always have a cool mask. And I felt like that was an obligation to me because I loved it when other goalies had
a burden
cool masks.
obligation or just a...
No, I just loved it.
Okay.
That's what I wanted. Like I wanted to be Mike Palmateer. I wanted to be Ken Dryden. But as far as going back to the stamp, that was also a little bit of bad advice. My agent's like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to ask him for $50,000 to be on the stamp. Right. Cause it was sweet. I'm like, man, an agent. I was like, okay, I was a 21-year-old kid. I was like, all right. And then,
I'll be honest, I knew you ended up on the stamp.
And then it ends up, they're like, no, we're just going to change the likeness of it. And then, okay. So then I went on with my life. Right. But that's how, and then I got some bad publicity of it. I wasn't even really part of it. I wasn't even really part of it. I was just a dumb kid that was like, agent says, okay, well, if they want to use your likeness, well, they should pay you for it. And I was like, okay. And that's how all that went down, and it just ended up being bad kind of publicity. But
I didn't even, like I said,
I rate that off to being a stupid kid.
I don't even think I don't know that a lot of people even remember that there was a bad.
Oh, there was.
I just remember the stamp itself. Yeah. Do you have any?
I do, but I couldn't even tell you where they are now. I think they're in a storage unit somewhere. I sent a bunch of when I went over for the '95 World Championships. I sent a bunch of them over on postcards to my friends back home. And we just had a good laugh about it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but I do have some somewhere.
Postcards from the '95 World Championship.
I do have some somewhere. Yeah, you have to be dead to be on a stamp in the U.S. So I guess I should be happy I'm on one. I'm alive.
Okay, so Canucks 98, 99, Washington Capitals 2000, 2001. A lot of time in the American Hockey League from kind of not a lot of time, but a lot of different teams bounced around a bit. 02, 03 with the Stars. What are your memories of that era? Are you learning how to deal with everything?
So now I'm doing well. Like now I'm doing really well. I remember my last NHL game out of all that, where I knew I got a start from Dave Tippett in Edmonton.
02, 03.
Yeah. And I knew that if I didn't play well, it was going to be my last chance ever. And so I went.
That's just a little bit of pressure.
So I go into this game and I get the start, and it's in Edmonton, and I never played well in Edmonton. I just could not. It was that we all have rinks and guys and that we play well in. And then we have places we don't play well. Like you look at Pecorine. What's his record in Pittsburgh? It's awful. He's in the Stanley Cup Finals against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And I remember
Luongo in
and
Minnesota.
It's just, is
when
out,
he was with the Canucks. For him, it was like, that was just like
and you don't know why. Yeah. And you don't know why. And you can't figure, but you just don't play well in those buildings.
So you've got a lot of positive thoughts going into this game.
Oh my God. So I'm like, and this is, so I don't even sleep that afternoon because I'm like, I know it's going to be and sure enough, I think we're tied 2-2 going into the third, and the puck comes to me behind the goal line, and I go to fire up a pass up the boards, and it hits Darian Hatcher in the shin pads. He's my defenseman.
And those are big shin pads.
And it goes right to somebody in the slot, and they bury it, and I'm standing in the corner, and it's 3-2 now. And I'm just like,
that's it.
I guess this is it. Yeah, we ended up losing, I think 4-3. But that was it. That was and that was my first NHL start in God, a long time. But I knew that it would be if I didn't play well, and that's okay. It's okay. Like I'm glad that I got a last start. A lot of guys don't get that. I got one last start, which is pretty cool.
Okay, and so after that year, you spend 3 years playing Sweden, Germany, and then back to Sweden. What was that experience like? You end up ironically back in Sweden, where you're famous for the stand.
Love Sweden, great people. Like still have a lot of friends there. Played Malmo, great city. Timrå, which Pettersson's from Sundsvall, which is just outside of Timrå. Didn't have a good experience in Germany. Switzerland I went to, and then there was the lockout. Remember the lockout and all the players. So Martin Gerber comes over and he takes my job in Switzerland.
Oh, that was the 0405.
So then I got to go from Switzerland to Germany.
Right.
I got to go to Switzerland to Germany, but I liked Switzerland. I could have played there. And then the next year I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I played in the B League in Sweden because they were trying to get back up in the A League. We got back up in the A League. So you
finished on a high note.
I'm one of the very few guys that I know it was Sweden and it was the B League, but I won my last game. So, right. I look at it like, I won my last game.
Hey, and listen, it's funny because here in Vancouver, we got to know Jonathan Dahlin when he was with the Canucks for a couple of years. His dad was Ulf Dahlin, and talking to him and Pettersson, it was actually Timrå for them just a couple of years ago, where Pettersson was already up, but Dahlin helped them win that and get out. It was a relegation tournament to get back into the Swedish Elite League and winning that championship. I remember Peterson telling me, because Peterson won like Player of the Year and all these awards. And I remember Petey telling me last year before the season, he's like, yeah, I had a great season, but I didn't single-handedly carry a team to a championship and back to the main league. So like, that's a big deal over there to get a team out of being back up to the Swedish League.
Could you imagine if the NHL had a relegation? So what happens is, for anybody out there listening that wants to know, is that the bottom two teams have to play to stay in the Elite League. And then the two top teams in the B League, and they have a playoff. And it's nuts. And it's like every game is a game 7. And then everyone's trying to get back in it. And it's actually pretty cool.
See, and you came out on top.
Could you imagine if like the Kings last year, would the Kings finish last? Didn't they? Who finished last? I can't remember.
I don't remember. It was Ottawa.
It was the Kings. Or was it? Oh yeah, it was Ottawa. So could you imagine if the Ottawa got relegated and Binghamton came into the NHL or Utica, right? Like that's what it would be like. That's what
you were guiding the Utica.
Yeah. So
you went out on top. So from there, and we've taken up way too much of your time, but let's quick transition. Coaching. You spent some time as a goalie coach. You're with the Blues. Walk me through that transition.
With Toronto.
Started with Toronto. That's right. 09,
coach
010
with Francois Allaire.
What was that like? So, you are more of a been there, done that guy. Is that fair to say of your career? Like your career, you would have had goalie coaches, but were you a real technical guy? Did that evolve over time?
Yeah, Mitch Korn when I was in Nashville. Changed. Mitch Korn gave me another 7 years of my career.
So you started with Harrison and the Yoda of masks, and you went to the Yoda of goalie coaching with Korn and
Mitch Korn. We can't forget about it. He gave me about another 7 years pro because he taught me how to play a butterfly style. Because I was total stand-up style goalie. I'm only 5'10", right? You had to play stand-up.
So that would have been 99, 2000 with Milwaukee.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in the organization, in the Preds organization.
So then, learning all that was great because Mitch taught me, but it carried over, and then I learned more myself. And then, so I get with the Leafs, guess who my goalies were? Toskala and Cujo. So Cujo's on his last legs. Like he's done. Like he's done. Like he can't, and he's a great goalie. And I'm 36. Cujo's like 38. He's older than me, and I'm coaching Cujo, right? It's the guy that I idolized.
What do you want to do today, Curtis?
What do you want to do? And he's just like, all right, just run me through some drills. He was Cujo's the best man alive. And then I had Toskala, and Toskala, he did not want to work. He didn't want to do anything, and he just he just wanted to go back to Finland, and that was it, right? We saw what happened. So I didn't have a very good experience in Toronto. And then Francois Allaire came in, and I was supposed to work with Francois Allaire, and Frankie was very secretive. Like he didn't want anybody knowing his stuff. And we all know Francois. And he took his goalies. So I'm supposed to be working with him with Toronto. And he goes on the ice and he's like, I don't want you on the ice. I'm like, okay. Well, and then I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Well, so I go sit in the stands. He takes the goalies down to the other end of the ice, so I can't hear anything he's talking about. This is the guy I'm supposed to be working with the Leafs. But that's Frankie, right? I mean, that probably nobody out there is surprised. But so anyways, I spent a year with the Leafs. Ended up getting hired by St. Louis. Great experience in St. Louis. Had Bishop, Jake Allen, drafted Jordan Binnington. Went up to Owen Sound, worked with Jordan Binnington.
What'd you see in Jordan? Here we go, Stanley Cup
just
champion.
Just a very
Jordan
athletic, raw guy. I didn't think I thought he'd be a goalie. I mean, like I very athletic. I didn't think do you ever think he's going to do what he did last year? I mean, he didn't even think he was going to do what he did last year. But we saw the raw athleticism, absolutely. And he was the guy that we had to put backwards motion into his game, a little bit of backwards flow into his game. Yeah, and I think that helped him. But give anybody out there that says they want credit for Jordan Binnington, you know what? You can go screw yourself. Jordan Binnington. He went out there and he did it, and he was written off and got a chance to play and ended up just running with it. And I'm so proud of that kid. And he's a man now. I shouldn't call him a kid, but I remember him as a kid. But like what he did and where he was, like he was done. And it's just, I love seeing that because there's so many good 26, 27-year-old goalies out there that aren't getting an opportunity, that they just need a chance.
Now broadcasting.
Yeah.
How do you find that line? I mean, you've been on every side of it.
Yeah.
You got to call a spade a spade. You got to be honest with your audience sometimes, but you also have relationships with these guys. How do you walk that line? Do you enjoy it?
I do. I find some days it's hard to walk into the locker room because somebody doesn't play well. Like I try to be honest. I'd never malicious. That is offside for me. Never being malicious with somebody, but be honest. A fan knows when Markstrom doesn't play well. I know when Markstrom doesn't play well. I might give him a little leeway on if he was screened or something, but my job is to be honest about that. And I've talked with Marky about that too. But when they do play well, when Markstrom plays well or a goalie plays well, I need to be the first guy to say that was a fantastic game by Jacob Markstrom. And so there's a fine line of balancing that, and you don't want to go over the line of a bad goal and just completely beating somebody up, because that's not cool. I wouldn't want someone to do that to me, but I got to be honest. And if it wasn't a good goal, it wasn't a good goal. But make sure you're the first guy when this guy makes a great save, that make sure that you pass the credit on. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, we could get into some gear, probably have some questions there. Why don't we save that for part 2 another day? I'll pass the credit on today, Hershey, and say thanks for taking the time to do this. And great. Again, just good on you for being brave enough to share your story with everyone, and then continue to be out there and out front helping people that need it. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for all your efforts.
Thank you. And you have a great following. And if you're out there and you're listening and you're struggling, go get the help. It'll be the best thing you ever do.
You guys did a couple of laps around the world there. That was good.
Much like his career, he was all over the place. It was funny because I knew about the stamp, right? And like I was telling him, I don't remember the controversial part of that story.
I don't either. That was brand new to me.
Yeah, I told him he probably didn't have to tell anybody that. Nobody would have remembered it. We just would have known about the stamp, and not that, as he said, just an error in judgment. Someone give me some money if you're going to put my likeness getting beat by Peter Forsberg. But I applaud him for being as open as he is about all this, because it encourages other people to do the same, and other people have followed in his footsteps, sharing their stories. And I think the more we can talk about these things out in the open, the better everybody is.
I can't remember, and I apologize, but who is the backup goaltender on that Olympic team? Because
wasn't he supposed to start? Wasn't there
well, or not? Maybe not start, but in the shootout, the other goaltender was thought to be a little more skilled or adept at the shootout, and Tom Reddy would have switched goaltenders in the shootout, but just wasn't available because he got hurt in warm up in that game.
Manny Legacy.
Oh, was it
really?
Manny Legacy. So now we have to ask Manny when he's in town.
Yeah,
unless it was a Lane Waugh, because there was 3 of them. So
I think it was a Lane Waugh.
Manny Legacy and a Lane Waugh.
So it's just how things all work out, and he ends up on a stamp. But one of the great things in my career as a goaltender and a gear nerd was when I was at Sportsnet. He brought the pads, those pads in.
I was going to say that's something you didn't ask about.
And just to be able to sit there and like handle his pads and put them up against your leg, everything that we do, that was cool. I love those pads.
Those are one of my favorite sets of all time.
Oh, it's funny too, because he talked about, before we went on the record, we were just chit-chatting over dinner before we went on and did the interview at his place. And he was talking about gear companies and how much he missed Brian Heaton.
Yeah.
And how saddened he was at his passing, and how what a good person he was as well, and how he was just always about helping the goalies. And it's funny, Alain was now an agent, right? So we're gonna have to get him on. And the other thing is the gear. You're talking about the pads, Darren. He had a Harrison mask in his apartment there, the one with the native theme design. And so I was holding that, and we were talking about that as well as he walked us through the story of being fitted by Harrison. And here I am. I'm like I'm holding a Greg Harrison mask. Like, to me, that was pretty freaking cool, especially one that had been worn in the NHL. And there's these chips from the shots and everything, and it's just like. His Hitchcock Psycho mask's in the Hall of Fame. Here I am holding another one he wore in the NHL, this Greg Harrison mask, just sitting in an apartment. It was pretty cool experience for me too.
I can't believe he took the shot at Hitchcock though. The goalies and coaches, they never forget. They always find a way to throw in a jab. But that was really well done and well timed as well. Whether you planned it or not, good on you for admitting it. But things work out for a reason, and good on you.
Good on Corey for taking the time too. Like I said, he'd had a very long day, but we'd made this appointment and he was sticking to it come hell or high water. And I'm glad he did, because I really enjoyed the conversation.
Hutch, I'm curious, just as a father of a young goaltender, you pay a little bit more attention to mental health because of the awareness of the position and life. I mean, life is tough as it is, but then you throw the stresses and different anxieties of playing the position. Or is it just like you would any other kid?
I don't know. I guess the first thing that comes to mind with all of those things is just, are you having fun, period? So it's the layer that comes beyond all that. If it ever got to the point where I was worried about my kids' mental health, I think we would have gone way too far down that road. And I'm glad that Corey said that, hockey saved him, if anything. And I like to think that hockey's the thing that, for so many of our kids, goalies, non-goalies, gives them so many things beyond the rink in terms of self-confidence, in terms of leadership skills, and so on. And I think for my guy, that's absolutely the truth. So I like to think it gives him strength, that maybe makes him stronger in a lot of other areas of his life. So I'm not really worried about the mental health. The other one I wondered, guys, just listening to this, and I don't want to take it too lightly, but I almost wonder whether it's okay for goalies to talk about this and to feel this more than players, because everybody sort of sees us as a bit different anyway. And maybe it's just a little bit more okay for us, and maybe there's more of a stigma for players. Just something that came to mind.
Kind of ties into what Corey was saying. Yeah, I mean, I asked him, like, we talked about all these examples from Malarchuk to Ben Meisner to obviously Robin Lehner, and me and Corey talked about it. We know a lot of other guys too, goalies that have similar stories, and not all have decided, in the National Hockey League, not all have decided to share them yet. But as he said, like it's not because they're goalies. Like, the disease, it's a disease and it doesn't discriminate. Mm-hmm. And so maybe there is something there in terms of it's the goalies that are coming out. I think he said, what is it, 20%? So 1 in 5. So chances are it's not just the goalies in locker rooms, if you could go around and do the math. And maybe there's just a reason that there's that willingness for goaltenders to come out and share those things. It's such a solitary position. And I'd always kind of wondered if the two were tied in terms of that's why. And so it made sense when he said it, and it was good to hear it. And it was kind of enlightening that no, like this, you don't have a mental health issue because you're a goalie. It's irregardless. But in a position that does create all those stresses, maybe that's why there's more of a willingness to go get help and share and encourage others to do the same.
Let me throw this one at both of you. Mm-hmm. We live in a world of political correctness. So knowing what you do through the education of mental health and the way it impacts goaltenders in particular, is it still okay to say the goalies are wacko or goalies are crazy or
Crazy goalie?
Crazy goalie.
People do it all the time, and yet, like the truth is, it hasn't really been true for a long time, has it?
No.
Like I go into locker rooms and talk to these guys all the time, and there's different personalities, just like there are different personalities with forwards and defensemen, and yeah, we have maybe some superstitions, but I see players with tons of superstitions. We have routines to get us prepared to play, and some of them may look a little different in terms of, like we see the Connor Hellebuck doing the pregame visualization, and they put the bumblebee music to it, and the eyes are going everywhere, and it's like, oh, the crazy goalie. Well, no, it's actually a very specific exercise designed to warm up the muscles around the eyes. Like these are preparations, and I think for the most part, people recognize that now, don't they? I think that, like, if that stigma exists still, I think it's just one that's full of errors. It's not true. We're long past the Gilles Meloche reincarnation
Gilles Graton.
stories.
Gilles Graton.
Graton. Sorry. My apologies to both of them for just the mix up. But yeah, we're kind of past that stigma. I think maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no, I don't think you are. I think it probably came from the day when we didn't wear helmets, when Glenn Hall was putting bubble wrap on his arms so that he'd be a little safe out there. You had to be a little bit crazy to be a goaltender.
Throwing up before every game.
Yeah, although he did sort of tell us that was a little bit over-exaggerated when we spoke to him. But nowadays, who are the ones that, I don't want to say crazy, but you're blocking a shot in forwards gear coming from Zdeno Chara. You're a defenseman clogging up the lanes in front of the net in the gear that you're wearing. I mean, we're the safest guys on the ice. I think we're the smart ones, not the crazy ones.
And maybe it is tied into the gear. You're right, because you sort of did have to have you had to have that edge to be willing to do that. Now, like, I'm a 46-year-old beer leaguer who has no problem standing in front of the shots of guys who played at a much higher level because I'm wearing professional level equipment, and then 9 times out of 10 it doesn't hurt.
No, I would say that the people that I talk to now who feel that way, at least, around the kids' game, they seem to more emphasize that, Darren, you brought it up, that the mental pressures, and that it's a lot that a kid has to go through, a lot that a parent has to go through. And maybe they see that as being a little bit weird today. And I hear weird more than I hear crazy. Because I think you are right. We have to be careful with our terminology. So yeah, I think it's changing.
Well, good. Evolution is great. Evolution without it leads to extinction, and we want to do that.
Hey, it used to be you just threw the fat kid in net, right? Now we're the best athletes on the team. Well, with the exception of me, but
and me,
and even though you're brightening up a little bit, I think we've educated you along the way. And you know what? We're going to keep having fun too, Woody. You come down to Vegas. We'll be okay. We'll send Dad some selfies.
I'll stay home and feed the dog. Yeah, thanks.
I look forward to it.
Beautiful. On behalf of Kevin Woodley and David Hutchison, our thanks to Corey Hirsch for the honest, well, it's become part of his resume, the honest and entertaining conversation about both mental health and his career as a goaltender. I'm Darren Millard. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time on InGoal Radio, the podcast.